I'm just here to ask the questions. You're here to answer them on KCMO. Happy Monday morning. Hit the preset on 95.7 FM. This is all I'm doing here. I don't want to hear it. Some of you you're gonna already.
I'm getting pissed now.
I know some of you are already getting worked up before I even give you the details on what I'm going to talk about. But I know the tease was bothering some of you based on the text line here. So let me ask you a question. Here's the question. If I say to you, Nikki Haley goes up against Joe Biden, and I guarantee you that she is the next president of the United States. Or I say to you, listen, we can roll the dice with Trump, but let's say it's 50-50 at best that he ends up beating Grandpa. What are you taking? Now, I know how many of you are going to feel. But once again, it's easier to react emotionally to this question right out of the gates than it is to sit back and think about it and understand that Joe Biden has done an incredible amount of damage, most notably economically, but I would also argue to the safety of this country than any president, certainly in my lifetime, and I would say most of your lifetimes. When you sit back and look at that and say, okay, if you can guarantee that guy's out of the White House, even if it's in favor of someone like Nikki Haley, who a lot of us are like, I'm not here to be Nikki Haley's cheerleader by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not. But it guarantees you that the damage Joe Biden has done to the country comes to an end. Or I said to you, hey, we roll the dice with Trump. Now, we know the policies have been great. We saw it just a few years ago. We know what he can do, especially when it comes to the economic success. Now, with that comes a lot of headache, but we know what the economic success is with those policies. We're going to roll the dice. What do you want to do? And here's why I bring this up before I get to you at 913-408-7957. It's 913-408-7957. I bring this up because there were two really interesting polls that came out over the weekend. Wall Street Journal poll on Saturday. Nikki Haley, hypothetical matchup with Joe Biden. She has a 17-point lead. 17 in this new Wall Street Journal poll. Now, if that were to happen, and I'm not saying that it would, but if that were to happen, that would be the biggest win in a general election since Reagan beat Mondale by 18 points in 1984. But I'm sitting back and I'm looking at that poll and I'm like, holy smokes, what is going on here? Then there was this, which is interesting over the weekend. Different poll. Same poll, but different candidates. This is also from the Wall Street Journal, put out on Saturday. It's got Trump beating Biden 4 points, barely outside the margin of error. So it's essentially a hypothetical dead heat, but still, Trump is leading him 47-43, but it's basically within that margin of error of about 3 points. So you got one guy in a dead heat, you got one person up by 17. Biden's overall job performance, by the way, in this poll is 37%. 37. It's horrible. 61% of respondents see his overall image in an unfavorable light. That's a record high for this polling done by the Wall Street Journal. The president also compared unfavorably to Trump when it comes to most issues, with a majority of respondents saying Trump was better suited for the economy, inflation, and border security. Trump also garnered higher marks than Biden on crime and ability to handle the Israel-Hamas conflict. The only thing that Joe trumped Donnie on was abortion and setting a better tone in politics. Well, I mean, that's weird because abortion's not a national issue anymore. And, I mean, setting a better tone in politics, it's like, okay, what do you want? The guy who's throwing bombs all day or the guy who can't put together two sentences? I don't know what. Neither's a good option, but I suppose you could make the argument there in terms of setting a better tone in politics. But one guy may set a better tone. You just don't know what he's saying half the time. 913-408-7957. That is our studio line and our text line here on KCMO. Let's start with Joe. Hey, Joe, what do you got for me, brother?
Well, I believe, not believe, there's facts, but Trump was ahead of the polls against Biden, and he still lost. Now, lost legally, that's your opinion and everybody else's opinion, not mine. But I definitely would take Nikki Haley if it came down to it. Just because if she's that far ahead in the polls, then I think she's got something going for her there.
So you would say that, so you're basically of the opinion that you would rather just get the victory with Nikki, even if she's not the person that may not give you the best policies, you'd rather just take the win and move on.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Okay.
You got to get him out of there. Got to get him out of there.
Well, that's why, thank you, Joe. That's why this is a very interesting question. You know, you can make the sports analogy, too. Like when you're trying to figure out who you want to play in the playoffs, it's like, who do you want to play? Who do you want to beat? Do you want to beat the best of the best, or do you just want to get the win? That's the kind of stuff that comes up all the time. All right, there you go. 913-408-7957. Alex is in Overland Park. Alex, you're next up. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. So I would take Nikki Haley as well. I think that when you look at the two parties, obviously Democrats, Republicans, conceptually, the Republicans have pretty much all the same ideas on their platform. There might be a little tweak about how somebody would do something this way or that way, but for the most part, we all agree on, the priorities of the party. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, it comes down to, who do you think is your best messenger? Who do you think would be maybe a little bit more equipped to handle certain situations? And I agree, I think Trump would be better on the economy because he's a business person, but I think Nikki Haley is better on national security stuff because of her history working in that department. So for me, I think people are so tired of Trump. And I know people even in my life that they will hold their nose and vote for Trump because they want a Republican in as president. But if you gave them a second option where they're actually more excited, I think that will bring more people in to vote for Republican in general. Mm-hmm. Because I know people who have voted for Biden, they have flat out told me they will not vote for him again, but that does not guarantee they will vote for Trump because they hated Trump.
Brings up a very interesting point, Alex. Thank you so much. 913-408-7957. This is kind of the place we find ourselves in right now, right? Where we're headed down the road for people aren't actually voting for something. They're voting against something. And it makes you wonder what that means for the country. But, hey, just to be fair, too, we had, and I'm up against the break, so I don't want to keep taking calls. I will take more after the break on this. I'll do more at 913-408-7957. But there's plenty of you that feel differently on the text line, too. Pete, this is on the text line, I would take Trump with a 1% chance over a guaranteed Nikki Haley presidency. That's a bold statement. You'd take Trump with a 1% chance over a guaranteed Nikki Haley win. How about that? And there's plenty of folks with similar feelings on the text line. 913-408-7957. I'll get to more of you. Plus, I have some big news about this show that just dropped. I found out about it 10 minutes ago. We'll get to it coming up. We're going to get to your calls here, 913-408-7957. But I do want to share this a little bit of breaking news on a Monday morning. This show was just voted by industry executives as the number 11 mid-market morning show in the country out of 98 different talk shows. So how about that? That is very nice of the folks in this business who ranked this show number 11 in the country out of 98 mid-market morning talk shows in the country. So, you know what? That's not a credit to me. That's a credit to you because you guys helped make this show work. Thank you to you, by the way, for helping get this show out there, for driving our success as we approach the start of year 7 this spring. I can't believe it. Very exciting stuff. So, and by the way, we beat the other morning show in this market that happened to crack the top 20, but we had them beat by a few spots at number 11. So this is done by Barrett News Media. For those in our industry, it's a known commodity. It's a known resource for those in radio and really all media for that matter. And industry executives put this list together every year. They do the top 20 news talk radio shows, and this show comes in at number 11 in the country. So thank you for that, but we really couldn't do it without you. And this just came down here in the last 20 minutes. It was sent to me on social media, and I said I got to share this with the audience because you guys are ultimately what make this work. We couldn't do it without you. So I'm very proud of that, very excited about that, and what we've done here on KCMO over the last several years. Number 11 in those rankings in 2023. So fired up about that. Now back to you. I brought up this conversation before the break. Would you take a guaranteed Nikki Haley win over Joe Biden, even though Nikki Haley is not most Republicans' cup of tea? Or would you take Trump in a potential coin flip against Joe? And I brought this up because the Wall Street Journal poll over the weekend was dropped, and it had Nikki Haley beating Joe Biden in a head-to-head by 17 points. 17. Haven't seen a landslide like that since Reagan and Mondale in 84. Meantime, they've got Trump and Biden in effectively a coin flip. 913-408-7957 is our studio line and our text line on KCMO. Jonathan's in Kansas City. Jonathan, good morning.
How are you doing?
Doing well, man. What do you got for me on this one?
I mean, I generally, I'm a risk-averse person, so I tend to, I like a higher probability even more than a greater payoff with a lower probability. Having said that, though, one of the reasons I'm like that is because I'm just so fearful of what happens if you go for broke and you lose. I mean, I strongly believe, and I'm going around telling people this, if you do not show up and vote next year and the Democrats get the Senate, which, it's very close, it could happen, and they get the House back, which is close because now we're down to 2 seats, and if they keep the White House, they are probably going to pack the Supreme Court. They're going to reinstate Roe. They're going to introduce new states. They're going to get rid of the filibuster, and they're going to have H.R. 1 passed, which means there's going to be like the California way where you ballot harvest and steal elections and all that. It's going to be the way of the land in all 50 states. And I don't know what our country is going to look like after that. I don't know if we'll have much of a country. I just think that probability, it's too bad to take a risk on. I mean, we're in too. So
hold on. But yeah, I got to get you to answer so your answer is you would take Nikki Haley.
Yeah, just because I'm worried about the downside to our country. Like we are in too bad a situation to be taking risks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what people have said. Jonathan, thank you. That's what people have said. I mean, at least thus far on the phones, which is if offered those two things, what do you do? Do you take the chance that Trump, yes, may be a better president policy-wise than Nikki Haley, but you stop the bleeding and you stop the destruction? Sandy's in Leawood. He's next up, 913-408-7957. Sandy, good morning. Go ahead.
Pete, how have you been?
I've been well, my friend. I've just been here every day. I hope you've been well. What's happening?
I have. I got to tell you, I can't even... The key, I get people all the time, what do you think about Trump? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Who are you going to vote? The key is we got to get these guys out of there. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's just...
So the answer to you, as you see it, if given those two options?
Sure, I'd take anybody. I'd take Nikki Haley. I would take whoever can get elected. That's it. I mean, it's just that important in my mind. I don't think people really understand what damage has been done and what's going on. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is really if we're not cooked already, that would cook it if he's reelected. It really would. So I would take, my answer is yes, I would take Nikki Haley, assuming that poll's correct, but I'd take Ramaswamy, I'd take DeSantis, I take him. The only thing I will say beyond that, whoever gets elected, they better be tough because it's going to be brutal.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody from the Republican side is elected, they're going to have skin of armor.
Yeah.
I mean, and one thing about Trump, I'll say one thing: he has demonstrated he's a tough guy. But you got to get elected.
Yeah,
and that's the most important thing. So I think that's the way you feel about it, and it's certainly the way I feel about it. So
I'm just
anyway.
Sandy, good to hear from you. I'm just throwing the question out there to you. This is a different take on the text line. 913-408-7957. Pete, I'm tired of holding my nose to vote. Trump has passed his prime. Nikki Haley's part of the swamp and not to be trusted. I trust her about as much as I trust the presidents at Harvard, MIT, and Penn. Oh, my goodness.
Show some RESPICT.
And then this texter wraps it up saying, DeSantis is our only recourse. Listen, there's no right answer here. I'm not looking for an answer. I'm not fishing for an answer. I'm not. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just simply asking you the question. What would you want in this hypothetical? It's not about whether or not the polls are right. How's this poll done? I mean, who cares about that, right? We're just talking about some of the polls that are coming out. In this case, it's a Wall Street Journal poll that shows Nikki Haley beating Biden by 17. If that's correct, we haven't seen that in what'll be 40 years come 2024. Whereas Trump and Biden are in a coin flip. Trump is leading by 4, but more or less within the margin of error. So it's just more about whether or not you'd rather roll the dice going into next year. That's it. That's what the conversation is really about. And that's where we've been driving it here with you at 913-408-7957. Oh, boy. Some of you are just being wise on the text line. Some of you I can't read some of this stuff on the text line. John writes, though, Pete, it's Trump or bust in my book. Also on the text line, Pete, massive establishment GOP donors back Nikki, and a nice poll comes out from the Wall Street Journal. See, listen, I don't really trust any poll that I see anymore. I don't. They make for interesting conversations, but I don't trust any poll. But the point of this conversation is not to discredit a poll, because some of you that might say, well, it's Trump or bust, I love Trump. You love it when a good poll comes out for Trump. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say polls are meaningless, but then when a great Trump poll comes out, be like, oh, man, look at the polling. It's one or the other. I'm skeptical of every poll. So this isn't really about polling. This is just about the conversation behind the poll and whether or not you would take that trade-off. And this has resulted in exactly what I wanted it to with you guys. An awesome, really interesting conversation with you guys activated on a Monday. And I'm just trying to get your mind off that disaster of a game yesterday. That's a large part of what I'm trying to do as well. Get your mind off the game, get your mind off the officials from last night, and get your mind off the fact that Patrick Mahomes lost his cool on the refs when he should have lost his cool on his crappy wide receivers. That's who he should have lost his cool on, not the officials. He should lose his cool on the fact that Kadarius Toney was looking at the ball and not realizing he's half a yard in front of the football. I mean, they teach you this stuff in peewee football. So that's what we're doing here. It's all good. 913-408-7957.